Welcome to this .NET MAUI ListView and DataForm tutorial. In this video, I will show you how to display detailed information for a list of books and perform CRUD operations on it using the Syncfusion .NET MAUI DataForm. Additionally, I will demonstrate how to implement a search bar for locating books. I open an existing MAUI application. Here, I have already configured the .NET MAUI ListView control and specified the source path to display a list of books. To learn how to add the Syncfusion .NET MAUI ListView control to your MAUI application, watch the video linked in the YouTube card above or the description below. Now, I run the application. You will see that the book details are displayed along with their respective image. Next, I will show you how to display the information of each book. I begin by creating fields to store the book information. In the ViewModel class, I declare a property, selectedItem, to store the currently selected book. I also define a property named isReadOnly, which controls whether the book details form is read-only or editable. To help toggle UI elements based on the edit mode, I add a read-only property called isVisible. Additionally, I create a command named tapCommand, which is triggered whenever a book item is tapped in the list. Next, I create an onTapCommand method, which is executed when a book item is tapped in the list. In this method, I access the data of the tapped item in the list by converting the event argument to the appropriate type. Then check if the conversion was successful by ensuring it is not null. If it is, I extract the tapped item, which represents the selected book, and assign it to the selectedItem property. If the selected item is null, exit the method early using a return statement. Next, set the isReadOnly property to true, making the book details form non-editable. To create the book details page, I search for the Syncfusion MAUI DataForm NuGet package and install it in my project. To learn how to add the Syncfusion .NET MAUI DataForm to your MAUI application, watch the video linked in the YouTube card above or the description below. Next, I create a content page named Book Page to display the book's information. Then, import the Syncfusion MAUI DataForm namespace. I set the page title so that it reflects the name of the selected book. I define a grid layout, and within it, add an image control to show the book's cover. Then, place the image in the first column, bind the source to the book's image property, and center it both horizontally and vertically. I also set its size using the height request and width request properties. Next, I add a DataForm control and place it in the second row of the grid layout. I bind its data object to the selectedItem property, which automatically generates input fields based on the book's properties. I also bind the isReadOnly property to control whether the form is editable or not. Now, I navigate to the ViewModel class. Within the onTapCommand method, create a new instance of book page and set its binding context to the current view model. This ensures the page has access to all the necessary properties. I navigate to the new page using the push async function, which adds the page to the navigation stack and displays the selected book's details. Next, I will create an initializeCommands method and call it in the constructor. In this method, set up the tap command by linking it to the onTapCommand method, which handles user interaction when a book item is tapped. Now, I navigate to the main page XAML. In the ListView control, I bind the tapCommand property to the command defined in the ViewModel. This allows the app to respond when a user taps on a book item. To improve the visual alignment of labels in the book details form, I move to the book page CS file. Within the constructor, I assign a custom item manager to the book form. This manager allows us to override the default behavior of the data form, specifically how labels are rendered. Here, the custom class inherits from DataForm Item Manager. In this class, I override the initializeDataLabel method, which is called for each label in the form. This gives us control over the label's styling and layout. In this method, I set the label's vertical options to center. When I tap on any book from the list, the app navigates to the details page and displays the selected book's information. To enable CRUD operations in the UI, in the View model class, I declare commands for creating, saving, canceling, editing, and deleting books. To add a new book to the list, I implement the onCreateBook method and invoke it within the initializeCommands method. In this method, I create a new instance of BookInfo and assign it to the selected item property. This prepares a blank book object to fill in. I set the isReadOnly flag to false, enabling the input fields in the UI to enter book details. Then I create an instance of BookPage and assign it to a variable. I set the binding context of the page to the View model, ensuring that data binding is properly configured. Finally, I navigate to the book page, allowing the user to interact with the new book form. To save the book information, I implement the onSaveBook method and call it in the initializeCommands method. In this method, I check whether the book currently being edited already exists in the books collection. If it does not exist, I add it to the list. After saving, the application navigates back to the previous page using the popAsync method. To clear the selection, I create an onCancelBook method and invoke it within the initializeCommands method. In this method, I clear the selected book by setting the selected item property to null. Then, I navigate back to the previous page, effectively removing the current page and returning the user to the book list. To enable editing of book information, I implement the onEditBook command method and call it in the initializeCommands method. In this method, set the isReadOnly property to false, which switches the UI from view-only mode to edit mode, allowing the user to make changes to the book details. To delete the selected book from the collection, I create an onDeleteBook command method and call it within the initializeCommands method. In this method, remove the currently selected book from the books collection. After deletion, the application navigates back to the previous page. Next, I create a book option class with two properties: action name, which holds the name of the action, and action icon, which holds the Unicode character, representing the corresponding icon. To notify the UI whenever items are updated, I create a property named commitOptions. To configure the options for user interaction in the UI, I implement the initializeCommitOptions method and call it within the constructor. In this method, create an instance of the observable collection and assign it to the commitOptions property. I add a new instance of book option to the collection with the action name set to save and the action icon set to a Unicode character representing a save icon. Similarly, add another book option for the cancel action with its corresponding icon. Next, I navigate to the main page XAML file to add the book creation icon. Within the existing grid layout, I add a nested grid to organize the layout. I add a label control that functions as a button. I set its text property to a Unicode character representing the create icon, style it with a primary color, and center it in the second column of the grid. To make it interactive, I add a tap gesture recognizer to the label and bind it to the createBook command. To display the save and cancel buttons in the UI, I move to the book page XAML file and import the Syncfusion MAUI core namespace. In the third row of the grid, I add a border element with a light gray background, which serves as a visual separator. In the final row, I add a grid with a fixed height. Inside this grid, place a chip group to display a set of interactive action chips. It is horizontally centered and is only visible when the isVisible property is set to true. Each chip is styled with rounded corners, a transparent background, and no border. The chips are populated from the commitOptions collection and trigger the onChipClicked method when tapped. Each chip is defined using a data template. Inside the template, use a horizontal stack layout to arrange two labels side by side, one for the icon and one for the action name. Now, I navigate to the onChipClicked method. Within this method, I first retrieve the binding context and cast it to the view model to access its properties and commands. Then, I cast the sender to an SF chip, allowing interaction with the specific chip that was clicked. I access the first child of the chip, which is a layout container, and then retrieve its binding context. I cast it to a book option and access the action name property. This identifies which action the chip represents, such as edit, delete, or save. To prevent errors, I check whether the action name is null or empty. If it is, I exit the method early using a return statement. Then, I use a switch statement to match the action name and invoke the corresponding method in the view model. For the save action, I commit the form data before saving. Once the application loads, the book creation icon is displayed. Tapping the icon allows you to enter book details. After filling in the information, you can tap the save icon to add the new book to the list. To provide edit and delete actions, I navigate back to the View Model class. I create a property named CRUD Options, which is bound to the chip group in the UI. Next, I implement the initialize CRUD Options method and call it in the constructor. Within this method, I create an instance of the observable collection and assign it to the CRUD Options property. Then add a book option for the edit action, setting the action name to edit and the action icon to a Unicode character representing the edit icon. Similarly, add another book option for the delete action, assigning the appropriate icon. Now, I navigate to the book page XAML file to display the edit and delete icons. Within the grid, I add a chip group that is horizontally centered and only visible when the isRead-only property is set to true. The chip group is bound to the CRUD Options property, which contains the edit and delete actions. When a chip is tapped, it triggers the on-chip clicked event handler. Each chip is defined using a data template. Inside the template, a horizontal stack layout is used to arrange two labels side by side, one displaying the icon and the other showing the action name. Now, I select a book to view its details and tap the edit icon to enable editing. This switches the form into edit mode, allowing the book's information to be modified as needed. You can also delete a book from the list by clicking the delete icon. Next, I will demonstrate how to display a search bar to help users find a book. I move to the main page XAML. Within the grid layout, add a border element in the first column. This border has a white background, rounded corners, a specified stroke thickness, and margins to provide spacing around the element. Inside the border, place a nested grid with two columns, one for the search icon and the other for the text entry field. In the first column, add a label that displays a search icon using a Unicode character. The label is centered and styled with a font size, along with horizontal margins for proper spacing. Next to the icon, in the second column, I add an entry field named Search Bar. This entry has a transparent background and is aligned to the top with a fixed height. The clear button is hidden to maintain a clean and minimal design. You can see the search bar is displayed along with its icon. To enable search functionality, I create a custom behavior class that filters list items based on user input in the search bar. In this class, I declare two private fields, one for the list view and one for the entry control, which serves as the search bar. These fields are initialized when the behavior is attached to the page. Next, I create an onAttached method to connect the behavior to the page's controls. Within this method, I use the findByName function to locate the list view and entry controls by their XAML names. I then subscribe to the text changed event of the search bar, so that every time the user types in it, the search bar text changed method is triggered. Lastly, I call the base method. In the search bar text changed method, I reassign the search bar variable to ensure it references the correct instance. I check that the data source is not null, assign the filterBooks method to the filter property, and then refresh the filter to apply it. I also call the refreshView method to ensure the UI updates with the filtered results. Next, in the filterBooks method, I implement the filtering logic. First, I check whether the search bar is empty or null, and return true to display all items. Then, cast the object to book info and check whether the search text appears in the book's name, author, or description. If a match is found, I return the item in the filtered list. I create the onDetachingFrom method, which is called when the behavior is removed from the page. In this method, I nullify the references and unsubscribe from the text changed event to prevent unexpected behavior. I call the base method to complete the detachment process. After that, I move to the main page XAML. Within the behaviors tag of the content page, I add the ListView search behavior class to enable search functionality. When I search for a book in the search bar, you can see that the matching books are displayed in the list. Let me wrap up this video. You have learned how to display detailed information for a list of books and perform CRUD operations on it using the Syncfusion .NET MAUI DataForm. You also learned how to implement a search bar for locating books. If you want to see this example's working code, download it from the GitHub link in the description below. I have also included a link where you can check if you qualify for our community license, which gives you a free license key for all our .NET MAUI controls. If you found this video helpful, click the like button and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.